Okay, so here is a sped up edit. This is an edit that I have recorded so that you can see the process unfold as you watch. This is a video that you'll find in the bonus section of this course, and it's simply called GB Residence. And as you can see, I am working my way through the vids folder here in my project window, and as I go I'm checking off the clips that I've reviewed. So the general process is to click on each clip in the order of sequence that I shot them, and then as I scrub through the clip I identify the parts that I think worked and the shots that looked the best, and I use the in and out points. As you can see there, as you watch, I'm marking the in and the out point, and then once I've got the in and out point I drag the video through onto my timeline, and as you can see I'm grouping these clips on the timeline in an order that I feel at the time makes sense. So we are now working on the living and kitchen areas, and as I group together the shots that worked, I'm putting them into a new into a group of similar shots. So now we've moved into the bedrooms, and as you see I'm grouping them up and I'm putting them into a new group on the timeline there. There's 3, now there's 4 clips. They're all bedrooms and bathrooms and so on. So that sequence of shots sort of go hand in hand together. Now this is the ensuite of the master bedroom, and so now I have a grouped collection of shots that are basically the sleeping quarters of the home, and as you can see it's quite obvious that it's grouped in its own little area there on the timeline. So now I've moved on and I've gone through all the ground footage, and now I'm working through the aerial footage. Now there's quite a lot of aerial shots here, and it's really just a case of finding shots that work, finding shots that are well shot, balanced, exposed, and I guess flown. You know, a decent shot that is flown well. There's no distractions visually like the propellers or any sort of vibrational effects in the footage. There used to be such a thing called jello. So just making sure that all the clips that I've scrubbed through here, and I'm taking the best bits, if you will, out of those clips and placing it where I think it might work nicely on the timeline. You can see that I've started dragging these drone clips onto the second video layer, so V2. They're sort of the pinky purple coloured clips that are being placed across here now, and as you can see I'm sort of scattering them throughout the sequence. The idea here is to keep taking the viewer inside the house and then outside the house and then inside the house and then outside the house. And I think aerials are wonderful because you're sort of in and you see a certain section, so you might watch the living room and the kitchen and the dining, and then all of a sudden we're back out and we're remembering the scene, we're remembering the location, we're getting another perspective of how large the yard is or the neighbourhood, etc. And then once we've sort of seen that again, we zoom back in to the internal shots. Okay, so as you can see I've almost come through to the end of the aerial clips now, and so the next stage, once I've got my sequence together here, is to start working on the audio. Alright, so now we're looking at the audio stage. So now I've added a soundtrack that I want to use, and as you can see I am cutting the footage in time with the music. Now in this section I'm going to put a bit of a speed ramp through. So I've basically cut where I want it to start, and I'm finding a bit on the clip where I want the speed ramping to end. And now I've played, getting the playhead to the point where I want the ramping to have completed. I hit R on the keyboard and I simply drag the clip down and ripple delete. And you see that little speed ramp there, and it worked nicely. Now there's a lovely pause in the music here, and it just timed itself nicely to be in the sky with this drone shot, and then we can zoom back down onto our ground level. Right at that point. Now for this section here, I'm going to use a preset, and it's a preset that you can download from this website on the screen, and I highly recommend you support Dwyer. I think his presets are phenomenal and super handy for making your videos somewhat unique, and just gives you some variety in the transitions that you can use in your productions. So there's our lovely zoom in effect that we've just used, a preset. Now we're looking at an internal living room shots and the family room shots. I'm going to put another speed ramp in on this particular clip. So I cut where I want it to start, and then I cut on the footage where I want the speed ramping to end. R on the keyboard, drag it down to where I think it would be best placed given the timing of the music. So as you can see, I'm sort of ripping through it at the moment, really just relying on the rhythm of the music as to determine where the cuts are going to be placed in the footage. It's amazing how much detail you can take, you can observe in video as you watch it. So I mean, you only really need to see a room for maybe a second or two to understand, look, there's a kitchen, there's a dining room, etc. So it's good to do some quick cuts. You don't need to linger in scenes too much. You can sort of get a shot and then quickly move on to the next. And I think your audience will appreciate that, in the sense that they're getting a lot of information visually at once. And indeed, if they want to look at a room without having, or if they want to look at a room for longer, they can pause the video. But I think what this is all about, it's about keeping the interest up. So you want to make the edit as interesting as possible, and every scene play its part. Now this section here, the music goes quiet, and I'm not thinking it's going to work that well at this point, given that we're just looking at the kitchen. So I'm going to cut the audio and get rid of this quiet spot. So we cut there, and then where it begins again we cut, and then we simply drag it over. A little bit of a fine tune on that, trim it up a little bit. Sounds pretty good. Great. So we'll scrub through, we'll fast forward through the rest of that, because it's basically the same process. It's just a case of dragging in and sort of cutting the clips to suit the rhythm of the music. Now here's the end. Now I've got to the end of my clips, and as you can see, there's a considerable amount of audio left. So what I'm doing here is finding my beats, and I'm cutting on the beat. and simply bringing the end of the music forward to match the length of the video. So I cut a big section of the audio track out in order to skip straight to the ending where there's a nice fade and finish. So I'm pretty happy with that. The audio seems to be done nicely. There's a little constant gain fade out, and we're sorted. So let's move on now to the final stage here now, which is the once over with the color correcting. This is where I sort of basically go through all the clips now that they're all in position and the timings are done with the music and everything is basically where it's going to be. Now I'll go over everything again and I'll fine tune exposures, I'll saturate the colors, I'll lift the shadows, and all this is done in the color workspace of Adobe Premiere Pro, and indeed over in the Lumiere True Color tab. I do the same process for each and every clip. I will assess the clip just in general when I look at it, and sometimes you get it pretty close in camera to how you might want it to look ultimately in the end. But even so, I think there's always room to tweak, you know. So I find that my most common tweaks involve exposure, highlights, and vibrance. They're the three main areas that I go for first. Then I might adjust the contrast, I might sharpen it if I need to, I might add some noise reduction depending on the scene itself. I want my videos to be enjoyable to watch, even if you're not in the market to buy a home. I think it's very important to pay the same detail to each and every clip in your video to make it look as best as it can be. Because yeah, I mean, you know, I used to shoot a lot of wedding videos, and I used to, my goal was to make a wedding video fun to watch, even if I didn't know the people that were getting married. And it's the same with the real estate video. I want a real estate video to be, you know, pleasant to watch, even if I'm not in the market to buy. I mean, it's nice to look at a home and go, hey, that's a nice home. And so to do that, I think every clip needs to be given the attention it deserves. Now this one here, I needed to just take away some of the noise. It was a very dark room, so I'm using the Neat Video Pro plugin to do that. Google that and get yourself that plugin. It's well worth it when you need to tweak the noise. So that's pretty much it. You know, it's just a case of going through now and adjusting all of the clips, dropping the highlights, lifting the shadows, adjusting the contrast where required, and perhaps saturating the colors just to bring each and every clip to looking its best. So I hope you got something out of that. It's certainly interesting to watch it back in a fast forward fashion. That edit actually took me about 1 hour and 10 minutes in the real world. So that's how it all came to be. Let's check out the finished video.